see, I should be 10. My audio's up. I'm going to close this. And as usual, bring your questions, but I'm going to get, let's get warmed up. So I'm going to start with my friend and yours, BMO, the Bank of Montreal. No, I'm going to go to images. There we go. So I'm just going to look for a little picture of BMO, and probably a 3/4 is probably fine. So let's say save image as. There's a couple different ways we could go about this, but I'm going to go ahead and just throw this right on my desktop. And we'll talk about different ways you could match something. One of those ways, let's go in here to texture, import, and we're going to go to our desktop. And we're going to grab that JPEG, and we're going to go back into texture. We're going to select the texture. We're going to press this plus button, and we'll go ahead and scale this up using the little scale here. So we're in, what is this called? Texture Spotlight. So this is Z to turn it on, Z to go into modeling mode, and Shift Z to turn it off. John Yu, I'm doing all right. Oh God, I need to check. Look at this. Like I've got 97. Oh, speaking of, so if you want to go to my YouTube channel, here, let me do my spiel. You know, we'll just go to home, and if you scroll down, there's an intro to ZBrush in the ZBrush section. That'll give you a bunch of videos for if you're lost in this live stream. Also, my ArtStation page. If you go here to ZBrush What's New or Reillusion Character Creator sections, you can see all of that stuff in there. That'll walk you through that. But I have like 97 unread messages. I don't know. My life, my work life has been moving, but my personal extracurricular life has been at a standstill. So I'm sorry. I'll get into my email today. But I will check it. Sorry about that, John. Hey, Wild Noodles. So we have an image in here, and it is loaded into Spotlight, and we are in texture. We can select this. We can hit plus Shift Z to turn this on, and then I can just go in here and we can grab, like, in this case, we can just grab a cube. It doesn't matter. So we'll talk about, again, we're just getting kind of warmed up, but now I'm in a primitive state, which means I can go down here to initialize, and let's switch to another shader here so you can see. In here's all your shaders. You can just grab one that's like Skin Shader 4. And now you can go through here and initialize. And you can even change like the size of the cube or whatever, but it's probably going to be easier just to do that as a sculpting thing. So I'm just going to hit Make Polymesh 3D. Now, this isn't going to smooth very nicely. Preferences, Edit, Align Cursor to Surface Off, just so it's not flopping around. So if we go into edit mode or make Polymesh 3D, now we have an initialized state. If you want to simplify this cube, you can just hit Q cube, and that'll be a 2x2x2, you know, and sometimes that's better to work at. So we'll go ahead and we can just line this up. So once we've kind of lined up the perspective, give or take, we can go in here, hit W, and then we can just kind of scale this out. So this could be a block out for our cube. Now I'm going to talk about like how you can make different rounded cubes real quick, but you know, we'll scale this out a little bit. He's a little bit wider, you know. So once I have this all locked in, I can go into there's a couple different ways to do this, but we'll go into Movie, Timeline, Show, and we'll hit a little button in there. So that way when I move this, I can use my arrow keys left and right to kind of snap it back. And that's the basics of it. Now, if I'm going to be carving in or Booleaning in for a screen or for where buttons are going to go, or, you know, circles or something like that, which in this case, I don't think I'll need to do. Like, this will probably be sitting over. These would be nice to have punched in. We'll see. But stuff like a screen that's going to be inset, I would definitely want to do. And I don't know what the back looks like. So this is where, and also, if you just want to model from a front 3/4, that's fine. That'll kind of keep it loose, and you can, you know, just kind of eyeball the depth and stuff. But you can also go in here and do something like BMO Character Sheet. Perfect. And that'll give you, you know, a turnaround basically. So you can just grab one of these, and this will all be kind of laid out. Let me just see if I can. I don't care. Open image, in new tab, and that's gonna be tiny. Pinterest. I guess let me log in. Okay, here we go. open image in new tab. Okay, big enough. So if I go in here and it'll say save image as, now we have a character sheet. And the cool thing about character sheets is we can go in here to texture, import, and we can grab it. And then if we add this one with it selected, I can click this little plus sign, it'll add it over here. So you can have both of these on if you want to and just kind of move them around. Or we can grab our original one here and we can just hit the X and then we can just scale this up. So now we have, you know, front, 3/4, side, and we'll just kind of position this here. So now if I hit Z, I can go through here and I can say, okay, here's the front view. I have perspective turned off, so this is going to be kind of an orthographic view. And you can see, hey, we're pretty close. However, if I use my arrow keys, it's going to snap back to where I was. So let's go ahead and set some more timeline keys. So I'm going to drag this out, just click and drag it out, and then tap it again. And then you can go over here and we can we'll do one from the side here. You can see this is a little too wide, so we'll scale this down here. And I'm just using my camera to move. I'm not moving the arrow keys. I'm just leaving it in my world 0. But, and then we'll go to back here and that should be the same as the front, give or take. So there we go. So now we've got, and then we can use our arrow keys, front, side, back. And that's really all we need. Now, as far as like these rounded corners, you're going to see we have a very simple cube. So if we want to move these things around, so instead of Booleaning things, what we can do is we can go through here and we can go to our ZModeler brush, BZM, hover over an edge, go in here and say like slide edge loop complete, and we can just like slide this down or slide it up. And if we want to put another edge loop in here, we can hover over an edge. We can say insert edge loop, and we can just go through here and we can just start putting in edge loops. Now, if I'm over here, it's symmetrical on both sides, right? At least as far as the screen is. So I'm going to tap X on my keyboard. That's going to go in here to symmetry across the X, and then we can just go ahead and add an edge loop in here. So now, if I hit Shift Z, we've got a little space for our monitor. So if I hold down Alt and start painting, and then we can go in here, hover over a face, and we can do like a Q mesh, polygroup ball, and then we can just say push this back in, and now we've got a little space for our monitor. That's one way to go about this. Or you could do the Boolean method. And the other thing too is when we go to the side or the back, it's like, oh, we have a panel over here. Now, if I go through here and I say, okay, great, let me do a slide edge loop complete and scoot this up, just remember it goes all the way around, you know, an edge loop complete does. So instead of that, we could do, just do a slide edge, and then we could just say, okay, I'm going to slide this up, and then I could just do an insert single edge loop for this panel here, and now I've got a little panel that I could pop out. If I want to pop this panel out, I can hover over face, Q mesh, polygroup ball. I can start Q meshing, and then, okay, call it a day. Or if you want this to be a separate material that you fill in, or you want more control, you can start dragging this out and then hold down Control, and that'll pop out of its own panel, and then you can just pop this out. So now you've got two separate objects here, all in one subtool, but now we can hold down Control Shift, grab this one, go down here and say Split Hidden, and now you've got one that you can kind of move around, and you're free to go through there and, you know, round those corners and all that good stuff. So again, we'll talk about how to, I guess we can just do it now. So one way to round these corners is that we can go in here to Geometry, and there's a dynamic subdiv. You can hit D on your keyboard, say yes, and that will show you a preview of what it would look like if it was subdivided. If we go through and do that with creasing, we can say crease PG. That's our poly group, and that will go through. If I hit Shift D, that'll turn dynamic off, and that puts a crease around our polygons here. However, we want to hold these corners a little bit better, so we're going to hover over this edge, and we're going to say crease edge, and we can just crease that edge manually, or we can go down here to polygroups, and we can say group by normals. And it's going to put a different polygroup on that side, so I like to do a, geometry, modify topology, you know where it is, mirror and weld across the X, and that'll put the same polygroup on both sides. And now, with polygroups on all my major edges, I can use those polygroups with my creasing. And I'm going to start using my custom menu in a second, but just for now, we'll go ahead and say crease PG. So now when I hit D on my keyboard, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't smooth because our creasing level is set very high, crease level of 15. If you want to, you can say, increase the level of 2 and then smooth subdiv of 3. That's going to give you a preview of what it would look like if you creased it, subdivided it twice, uncreased all, and then subdivided one more time. It's just a preview though, so you can do Shift D and D to turn that on and off. However, I'm going to go ahead and keep this crease level set at 15. We'll go in here. Ooh, what would be interesting to do? Let's hover over this edge. Let's do a polygroup polyloop. We'll go ahead and make this edge all one polyloop now, and I'm going to say uncrease all, and then go back and say crease PG. So now we're kind of back where we started, where we just creased that outer edge. And so now what we can do is I can hover over this edge, say insert single edge loop, and just put in an edge loop. And when I do that, you're going to see I can start making rounded corners. And this is still in preview mode. So if I go this side and put in an edge, you're going to see I'm putting in control loops. So I can start getting those rounded corners. And if I hit D, that's dynamic preview. If I hit Shift D, it turns it off. But really all I'm doing is going through here and just putting in geometry so it'll hold that corner a little bit better. So when I hit D again, it'll keep that rounded corner. Now, if I want this the same on the top and the bottom, I can go down here just like we did earlier and do a geometry modify topology mirror and weld. But instead of across the X, which it already is mirrored, I can do Y. However, if I turn on my floor, that's going to put it mirror and weld across the world axis. I want that across my local axis. I want it to look at my bounding box as it is and put a line in the middle of this. So I'm going to go up here to local symmetry, turn off dynamic, and now it's going to look at the bounding box of this local axis. And now when I do a mirror and weld across a Y, is this actually true? Yes. Okay. It'll put... For some reason, I got nervous that I wasn't going to do this. It will now do a mirror and weld across the local axis of this object, bounding box. Now you're going to see it creased here. It's easy enough to fix. I'm just going to say uncrease all in my crease menu and then crease PG again. Hit D for dynamic. And now if I'm going to be modeling on this, I might go in here and say activate symmetry across the X and Y axis. So now as I go through here and I say like insert an edge loop or whatever, on the top or the bottom, it'll do it on X axis and Y axis. So now when I hit D, I'll have my rounded corners. Now, having said all that, I probably wouldn't do, I don't know, that's a fine way to do it, I suppose. But what I would probably end up doing, if you want to do it manually, you can hover over an edge and say insert multiple edge loops, keep polygroup, and you can just go through here. And if I'm just going to be modeling stuff, I'm just going to get a nice even surface. We'll say uncrease all. We'll say another crease PG. And this will just allow me to, I can hit D for dynamic. I can go through here and slide edge loop complete. And I can control these edges to get the exact curvature that I want. But I just have a more distributed, even polygons for poly painting or rendering, or I don't know. It's not a game res, but it's nicer for a high res. Even beyond that, if I undo that and you have just a shape like this, another way to do this is go over here to ZBrush and say detect edges, and then just say, oh boy, where is it? Half. And then we want to keep our groups detect edge. Actually, we just detect edges. We don't even need to detect groups. We're going to say depth size down to 0. That'll give us nice even quads. Hit ZBrush, and that will go through for us and just give us nice uniform geometry. I always like to do a quick geometry modified topology mirror and weld just to make sure, but since we had X symmetry on in the X and Y, ZBrush will go ahead and do that for us. So now we have a nice uniform cube. If you do want polygroups, just go in here and say group by normals, polygroups group by normals. Here, polygroups group by normals. There's your max angle you can change, but and then again a mirror and weld. So there's that, and then one more, just real quick. If you wanted to, say, append a cylinder, go out of solo mode. So we're going to rotate, grab the cylinder here, we're going to rotate it around, and we're going to scale it down. So we're going to use the cylinder as our curvature. So if I go in here to transparency mode, we can scale this down, scooch this back here. So now, basically, you would use this corner radius, about a fourth of this, to determine your radius. So if I go into polyframe, you're going to see this is my polyframe. And then we'll scoot this down to the middle-ish, and then we're going to go into the gear icon, and we're going to say extender, and we can just grab this top one, grab the side one, and now you have built-in geometry for your corner radius. Now you still got some extra stuff over here. We can get rid of that. And in fact, you know, one easy way to get rid of those is go down here to geometry, and we can do a edge loop, and we can say delete loops. You could say delete loops and delete them, but apparently it's not going to do that. Here's an easy way. Just go in here to group by normals, Control-Shift tap this front one, delete hidden, and then Q mesh or extrude a polygroup out. There you go. So now you're back. Or you could also do like a fake dynamic subdiv with thickness if you wanted to for a fake thickness. But anyway, so I like to do, again, mirror and weld. Let's do an X and Y mirror and weld. Uncrease all, crease PG or whatever. And now we've got a plane with a quarter radius. Now, if I did want to, say, keep this corner radius but move the edges up, that's when I need to hold down Control-Alt. Let's turn on X symmetry with X and Y active, local symmetry. And now I can move these up, and now I can move these out. Let's scoot this over. Hold down Alt to move your things. There we go. So now we have another way to. What are we doing? Let's go to Unmesh Mesh Center. Let's scale this out. There we go. So now we've got three different ways to make boxes and panels and all that stuff. And if I was going to be Booleaning stuff, but I still wanted to build in a nice radius, this might be the method I do, possibly. But even when I'm Booleaning, just to keep things, I would still probably go in here and say, you know what, let's insert just to kind of even that geometry out, just so when I Boolean stuff, there's more edges for things to grab on. Okay, back to chat. Yes, leaving n-gons. So as far as like, yeah, box modeling like this, n-gons certainly do free you up. ZBrush doesn't love n-gons, but or, you know, like a CAD modeling, like a, oh boy, they've all plasticity or Fusion 360 or, you know, pick your poison. Those are fun too, like where you can, you know, just kind of play with the shapes and it's just math. And then the only caveat there is when you go to make it into Polygon so you can use it in other applications, that's when things can get a little dicey. But I think the conversion of a CAD model into something usable for Polygon, usable as far as polygons is concerned, has gotten better. So, 6 of one, half dozen of another. Let's see. As always, feel free. Z modeler BMO seems like, yeah, I think it's a, yeah, something simple. Like even a SpongeBob is a nice, you know what? I think I have a, did I do a SpongeBob? I feel like I did. Yeah. You know, something that's just like, you know, we can do all the fingers and arms and stuff too. But, and also, so this is box modeling. I will say though, that when it comes to, boy, do I like to have Booleans and ZRemesher doing the heavy lifting. Because when I start getting into like this and trying to add control loops and stuff, it's almost always a nightmare for me, especially when it starts getting even a little complex. I start losing the plot real fast. So knowing all of this, and in fact, I would even go back, like once I have this panel out and I go back to the main body, it's like, well, now I have, you know, this edge is weird. I don't need this panel back here anymore. If you want to get rid of this panel, you can hold down Control Shift, click between them, those two polygroups, hit Control W, and that'll do it. You can also, I don't know, this is a weird method, but I like to do it. Hold down Alt and start painting, and then tap Shift to inherit that polygroup without lifting your pin up, and then just keep dragging. So you can just go through and repaint polygroups. If you want to like put this red one over here, tap Shift and just paint, and then just paint. Now, having said that, now I want to even these edges out. I feel like there is a, oh boy. I'll show you the way I would do it. I'm going to hold down Control Alt and then Alt drag. So I set my pivot here, and then I'm just going to Z scale or Y scale in this case, just to straighten that out. I do feel like there is a, or in this one, actually, we don't even need it. So we can say insert single edge loop, hold down Alt and delete it. But let's stick with this for a second. we want to do a, what is it? I never do it, so I can't remember it. But it is a, there's a way to like straighten stuff, but I don't remember what it is. Align, edge strip. Here, you. How does it work? I don't remember. Anyway, is there something else to see? I mean, I guess you could eyeball it, like slide an edge down if you wanted to, but again, just Control Alt. And when I do that, I'm holding down Alt and just holding down Alt on that point and then Shift, dragging to straighten it, and then just going through here and just scaling this down. If you wanted to do that for the whole line, like say this whole line was, or here, we can just do this. We can hover over a point and say slide, so we can just go through and like slide these points around. And it's like, oh, I want to straighten those out. You can also just hold down Control Alt and then grab Control Shift and do a clip curve. And then if you, this will just take those points and just snap them to your curve when you drag it out. But like I said, we don't need this. And in fact, I don't even know that we need any of this. So with this one selected, you can just go all the way back just with your history slider until you get back to just your main. Oh, you know what? When we split this one out, well, here's what we can do. So we split this one out, and it has a lot more history on it. It actually has the construction history of the original object, I think. Or is it this one? Doesn't matter. So this one doesn't have the construction history back, so we're going to say delete that out of here. And now what we can do is we can take this panel here, and we're going to duplicate it off. And now this one lost its history, but this one didn't. So if I take this one and go back, there we go. So here's our original cube. Boop. So we can just go back to like, here. This is about where my cube is, and I can start using this. So let's do Shift Z. Let's snap this back. That's the right size. So now if I were to go through here and like, actually, let me look at what let's see, BMO. Okay, so that's like a little SD slot. So this actually punches in. So that needs to punch in. These things ideally would be inset. It wouldn't just be, it's easier to do like we did with the panel. Just make the shape, put it on top, call it a day. But it's not going to render or read super nicely. So ideally, all of this would be cut in. And this is where we start getting into like Boolean talk. And in this case, I was going to... because we can do the rounded edges, but if I'm not going to do complex Booleans, I might consider putting in the rounded edges, cutting in something simple, zero meshing the results, and then I'm good to go. But as soon as it starts getting into like, well, I want to cut all this stuff in and have rounded edges, this is where I'm like, I'm going to keep it super simple. And in fact, I'm going to just have this up here so I know like what is cut. So this is a button, this is a button, this is a button, this is a cut in, this is cut in. Even the monitor, I feel like if I zero mesh this would be easier. Oof. This is where it starts getting weird because now I want this to be all one shell and I want it to have stuff that's cut in. Like panel lines and stuff. And like the back, this looks like it gets cut in. That little, this little back thing here goes in. But little things I could push in, complex things I would want to cut in. Let's just try it instead of talking about it. So we have an object here and I want to make all these different shapes. So I'm just going to go through here and we're going to start with, we'll do both, I think. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to Boolean all these shapes out and we're just going to see how it does. And I might leave the monitor alone and I think we can just do that later. Let's see how this works. Oh, okay. Let's see. So I'm going to go through here. I'm going to use my custom menu, but you can go here to BI brush insert primitives and hit M and just grab one of those cylinders out of here. But I'm going to, you know, I can give it to you if you want. If you want this custom brush, give me a second. Don't even know my hotkeys anymore. Okay, this is a IMM brush. IMM base primitives. Share. Copy link. I'm going to just drop this in the chat here. So if you want that, you can download that. And all it is just these brushes here. So I'm going to go in here to my brushes. The hotkey for that is set to Alt-E for me, and I can hit M for Michael on my keyboard, and I can go through here and grab like a cylinder 16 or 12 or 32 or whatever. So we'll say 16. I'm just going to drag this on my character. Now in this case, I don't need it across symmetry, so I'm going to undo that. We're going to tap X, which is going to turn off our symmetry temporarily. And now we can just go through here and say, okay, I want a circle here, and we'll just move that into place. And if you can't see it, you can just hold down Alt and move it over here, and you can just kind of plop that into place. Now we have more circles we want to make. Again, I need a image of it here. Come on. There we go. Okay, yeah, these are all buttons. Okay, so if I want another copy of a circle, I can just hold down Control and just drag out a copy. Now, if I want to scale this down, one easy way to do that is I'm just going to Alt-tap on here. We're going to hit Shift-Z, and if I scale it uniformly, it's going to like shrink and move away. If I want these to all be uniform, I can hold down Alt and just drag along here, along this axis here, and that'll just shrink it along that axis here. So, and then we'll just use our arrow keys to snap that back. And there we go. So Control drag this up. And this one should be, looks like it should be a little bit smaller. I'm not going to get, I guess I should, if I'm going to bother doing this. Nuance, you know, so this one is about the right size. I'm actually going to go back here, hold down Control Shift. Let's switch to select rectangle, grab a little piece of this one, Control Shift A, hit W, go to Unmask Mesh Center, we'll hit Reset. And again, I'm going to scale this up. Holding down Alt, I'm going to scale it up just a nudge. So that one's actually a little bigger than that one. Okay. And in fact, if you want to select these a little bit easier, you can go in here to Polygroups, Auto Groups, hit W, Control tap this polygroup. And again, I'm going to go to Unmask Mesh Center, Reset, and then hold down Alt. And you can just kind of scale along that axis. Now, we can also, if we wanted to, we can say, okay, let's W, Control tap this cylinder here. And it's all part of the same polygroup right now, but I can drag out a copy of this one. And again, we're going to kind of, we'll scoot this into place. I'm going to need to scale this down a little bit where we can use our extender again. So let's go to Unmask Mesh Center. And again, if you don't have to have them all sitting out here the exact same. I'm just showing you stuff. So we can scale this down. That'll give us the, radius of that kind of rounded button. And then again, just go in here, and there's actually a couple of different ways you could do this. So if I go into solo mode, let's see, this is unmasked, right? So just for ease of use, I'm going to go down here to split unmasked points. That'll put this into its own subtool. And then I can go in here and just say, yeah, give me an extender. And then we can just grab the left and right and boop, there we go. Now we've got a nice little rounded button. Or you can go through here, hold down Control Alt and just unmask one side. Hit W and just Control drag out, and that'll just put an edge loop. But you can keep Control dragging out if you want to, just or you could even Control drag out, let go of Control, and keep dragging, and that'll give you more edge loops the exact same distance. So just a couple different easy ways. So yeah. So we've got this here, and I'm going to scale this down just a tiny bit here. And like I said, it's uniform is fine. I can just go in here and just scoot it back. These don't. And if you did want to, you could say Control Alt and just move this edge out if you wanted to, whatever. It's fine. And then snap back, W, Control drag out, and I can't see, so I'm just going to scoot that over. All right. Now, here's the problem, perhaps, is this is adding more complexity. I can round these out later once it's punched in. I would want to use these as buttons, but I may not use them for Booleans. This will make more sense when I do it. So in this instance, what I might do instead is, I'm just going to go through here. I'm just going to go back into my custom menu. I just have a simple cube. We'll do cube mid. I'm just going to drag out and hold down Shift so it snaps straight. I'm going to say split mask points, which we did. And I'm just going to, if I'm going to do a Boolean on these objects here, I might just, I'm trying to simplify our Booleans as much as possible. So I might just Boolean this shape, and then I know when I go to do a dynamic subdiv after I Z-remesh, I can just stick that in there, and then we'll Control drag out a copy. I know I can round these edges dynamically subdividing, possibly. So I'll keep that as an alternative. And then once I do that, I can use these as my actual buttons. So it'll have an inset, and then I'll have buttons I can stick in there. And then these are easy enough to go through and be like, okay, I'm gonna use them as buttons. So we'll just bevel this edge loop and all that good stuff. But I don't want to do that before I Boolean, because I want my Booleans to be super clean for reasons you'll see in just a second. So one more, or actually a bunch more, but just real quick. Let's just do these real quick. So I'm going to go through here. I'm just going to drag out a cube, say split mass points. We're going to scale this out here and scooch this in and like so. And then for this down here, that could just be, again, I'm keeping it simple. It's not going to be the best way to maybe model the button for this, but as far as the Boolean goes, we'll just put a cube right in here and scale it down just a bit. Oops, yeah. And then we can just, let's go through here and go to Unmatch Mesh Center. We can hold down Alt and scale along that axis. And then every single one of these, let's do a quick group by normals. And we'll do a split mass points, just split that into its own subtool. And now I can go through here. Let's do again, transform in the head, tap X to go into X symmetry, X and Y symmetry. Local symmetry is on. So now if I do a mirror and weld across the X and Y local axis, Q mesh polygroup all, we can say Q mesh this up and Q mesh this out. And in fact, if I Q mesh this up a certain distance and then I just tap, it'll keep the exact same distance. So now I've got the little plus sign here, or the, you know, thumb sticks. And then one more, we'll do another cube mid. We'll go through here. Oops, let's turn off solo mode so I have something to drag onto. Let's turn off X symmetry. And I'm going to say, again, split mass points. And we'll go ahead and scale this up a little bit here. And let's collapse this top. So I'm going to go through here. We'll say insert, single edge, hold down Alt. And then we'll go to the top here. We're going to say collapse edge. We're going to turn symmetry back on by tapping X. We're going to turn off Y. We're just going to go across the X axis. And we'll just collapse these down. So now we have a little triangle. So now we have all of our buttons and such. Now, if I Alt tap on this object, you can Alt tap on any of these to select them. But I'm going to Alt tap on the body, and you're going to see we still have these stuck to it. So you can just say, you can Control Shift tap, and that's all one polygroup, so it'll isolate it, and then Control Shift drag, and they're just sitting there. I'm always a little afraid to do that, because I'm afraid if I Control Shift tap, and I'm like, okay, great, split, and then I realize, oh, there's a polygroup on the back, and it split that off too. So what I'll usually do is just do like Control Shift over a little piece, Control Shift A, and then just do a split hidden. So that's going to Control Shift A grabs all the contiguous points, and then when I split hidden, it splits these into their own subtool. And then back here, I think we want to keep, this is the one we want to keep. We don't need this corners going, so we'll just delete that out of there. Okay, now let's talk about that Boolean. Now I could Boolean in that monitor. I'm not going to. On the back here, instead of like taking a chunk and going to the back and doing that, I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to see if I can't build that in. So we'll just test. So I got all my Boolean objects here. If I want to move all these back into the object and make sure it's really in there, and in fact I want to maybe turn off these button versions, just Alt tap and then turn off the eyeball. I can hit W, go in here to move multiple, Control Shift drag over these, and now I can move all of these subtools. So let's make sure these are all plugged in there. And they're all simple. Again, if I want a nicer, well, here's something really important. When I Boolean these, I want to make sure that this back flat surface has a different polygroup than the side surface, because I'm going to end up ZBrushing the result, and I want to make sure that ZBrush has all the polygroup information it needs. So for all of these, I'm going to go through here and say group by normals and just ensure that I have a different polygroup on all the major sides. Same thing for this one, group by normals. Same thing for this one, group by normals. And this is just in your polygroup menu, group by normals, group by normals. So there's that. And that's going to be all my Boolean objects. The other thing too is I want this geometry to be decent. Now again, one easy way to do that is turn on X symmetry. X symmetry across the X is probably fine. And then geometry, we'll do our little hack. ZBrush half detect edges and just let it do the heavy lifting for us. If you don't trust that, just go through here and say insert multiple edge loops. You can hold down Alt first to delete edge loops if you want. Or you can just go in here and click and drag. And just like the extrude or the Q mesh, if you click and drag and make a number of spans, you can just tap and it'll make the exact same number of spans. In this case, I don't want to do that because I want these to be, you know, vaguely square, but you just manually go through here and do this. This one here we don't need it visible, so I'm just going to turn that off. So now with all of these visible, I want a very smooth result. One way on these, I don't want to build in the faceting when I go to ZBrush this. So what I'm going to do is go down here and we're going to say crease PG, again, just like we did earlier, just crease your polygroups, and I'm going to hit D for dynamic. Give me a smooth preview. If you want it really smooth, you can crank this up in your preview, but 2 should be fine. And then again, I want this geometry to be, this one I don't have to smooth. It's not going to be aliased or anything, but I am going to go in here and maybe insert just a couple extra pieces of geo. Put one in here. I just want vaguely, I just want enough information. Okay, this one here, I'm just going to say group by normals. Again, I want all the polygroup information I can get. So when I go through here, and I want these to be all cut out, right? I'm going to replace all of these with buttons eventually, or just keep these and use these as buttons if I want, but I want these all cut in. And then for the monitor, I'm going to see if I can't go through and just chop that out manually later, with just the geo that exists. So with all these showing, I'm going to say this is our cube, and all of these I want to cut out. So I'm going to go through here and just do the subtractive Boolean. Just go through here with all these visible and say you are going to be subtracted out, all the ones that have eyeballs on. So now I want to preview this. I'm going to go up here to live Boolean. There we go. So this is what our object's going to look like, and these are live. So if I go through here, let's turn off move multiple. As I move this around, you can go ahead and scoot these around however you'd like. And these are dug in enough. So let's all hold our breath. And if you were going to bake this, I would also scale these in, but you can also do that after the fact if you want. So now I'm getting nervous. We're going to go over here. Now this is a subtool operation, not a geometry operation. So we're going to go back to subtool menu. We're going to say Boolean dynamic subdivision on, because we turned dynamic subdivision on for our circles. We want to bake that into the geo. We're going to say make Boolean mesh. So that's going to give us a Boolean result. Union mesh here. It's not in here. It just spit it out over here. You could do folders in here and do an operation of a Boolean on a folder, or there's even operations for Booleans in your gear menu. But for now, we just tossed a U mesh out here, and this is our Boolean result. Doesn't look very pretty, but at least it's functional. Now, because this isn't, and this could actually, there might be a more elegant way to do this, but here's the result. Now, unfortunately, we can't do symmetry, X or Y symmetry on this. So we're just going to have to hope that with all these complex objects built in, ZBrush can do a decent job. Let's all cross our fingers. And also I want to make sure on all our sides here we have polygroups, because when I go through here and I do a ZBrush, let's say same, we're just going to keep the same poly count. We're going to say keep groups. I want smooth groups down to 0. They're already smooth. They're already sliced in there. It's going to be as smooth as it's going to get. Adaptive size, normally I would say go down to 0 because we want nice even quads, but this is so complex that may not work out. But let's just hit ZBrush, and this is our result. Not great, but let's fiddle with some of these. And let's say first thing I'm going to do is just double. So I want more polygons. Ugh. So if that doesn't work, just go in here and crank up your poly count. That will allow ZBrush to get enough polygon information in here to do what it needs to do. And again, this is fairly complex. It's got all these little intricate little cut-ins here, so it's not super easy. You could manually go through and then just use ZModeler, or use your whatever you want to do to go through and retopologize this by hand. And that might be, at the end of the day, might be better. So you could actually use this as just a live surface to go through and just cut in. But I'm trying to do it not so manually. Another thing we could try is adapt to size up. So instead of just over cranking our poly count, instead of telling it, hey, make all of this as uniform geometry as you can, we can go through here and say, you know what, if you need to put in more geometry around these tiny corners, feel free. So we're going to crank this adaptive size up a little bit, ZBrush, and that will allow it a little more leeway to build in detail where it feels that it needs to. So between those two options, and you can, again, you can say, you know what, let's try lowering that polygon. Oof, boy, half? Yeah, no. Okay, so we'll crank that back up to like 14 or 20 or something. And that will give us, again, not great for a game res, but okay for a render. So again, if you wanted to go through here and say, okay, crease PG, dynamic, crease level of 1, smooth subdiv of 2, now you've got a surface that has stuff built in, you can get a nice highlight on it, and then you can shove your little buttons in there, and it'll feel like it's inset, and it lives, and it interacts. Those two surfaces have a relationship. Now, this didn't solve the monitor situation. What I was hoping for, what was I hoping for? I mean, I don't have to hope for it. I can tell it, like, hey, when you're doing this, go ahead and if I'm using my poly groups, keep this. Let's go back here. Let's say Shift Z. Let's go back. I want a straight line. Oh, it goes right across here, doesn't it? I can move that down. Essentially, I want to say keep this poly group here, so it'll give me a nice straight result, so I don't have to Boolean this in and make it more complex. And I can. This is all a bunch of complexity, and that's fine, but I'm just trying to give you another option as far as like, hey, if you want to build this in, you can do it after the fact, but we need to drop this line down, something like this, and we'll hit W. So this would go here, and then on the back side here, we could say, hey, this poly group here. And so while I'm dragging, I'm holding down Alt. I'm going to let go of Alt, and as I just keep tapping Alt, it'll just give me a new poly group. So you could tell ZBrush, hey, keep that poly group and keep this front poly group as well. So now let's see what it does. So that way it'll keep those lines straight. So it'll still allow us to cut these Boolean objects in, but then up here, and you could also do this. You could also say, you know what, let's go in here, ZBrush. Now that we have all this working, we can say half, adapt size, keep groups, and just keep dropping this down and seeing if you can maintain the curvature that you want. Eventually it's going to break, but like you can kind of play around with that. Also, you can recap these. So you can say Control Shift, grab this little circle out of here, say delete hidden, and then you can just go back in here and say close convex hole and just whoop, beep. There we go. So now we can, oops. Boy, with these two for some reason this poly group shares something with that, so we're going to say auto groups, and then because those weren't contiguous, it'll just give it its own poly group. So now we have something nice and flat here to build a monitor into, something nice and flat here to build a little inset here. It actually did okay. I am pleasantly surprised. Granted, this is a lot of geometry, but I think it's workable. I think it's usable. We can move edges around as we need to round these corners off. In fact, you could even go in here and say, start deleting geometry, insert single edge loop, hold down Alt, and then just start, get rid of these corners. So now when we say, okay, give us a crease PG, hit D for dynamic, crease level of 1, smooth subdiv of 2, or hell, in this one, we may not even need a crease at all. You can start playing around with your edge bevels. Anyway, that's a couple different ways we could go through and get that BMO body. Or you could skip all this. You don't have to Boolean stuff in. You can just paste, because that's kind of what this looks like anyways, is like these shapes are just kind of plopped on there. That's fine, especially depending on how if you're going to be like zoomed in IMAX 4K on these things, then yeah, you probably do want a nice inset to stuff a button in and make it look more realistic. But if you're not, then don't bother. And you'll also see this didn't pick up a crease. Just go back in here and say crease PG. And then again, your crease level, you can set here crease level of 1, smooth level of 2. That'll hold those edges just a tiny bit better. Okay. Let's see, going back to the, sorry, I've been talking a bunch. Scroll to get more edge loops. I'll have to give that a shot. I don't use my mouse that often in ZBrush though. Harsh, thanks for streaming. Yes, how can I sculpt wrinkles and creases in a paper bag? Oh, okay, crumpled. I don't know that I would sculpt, well, I don't know, maybe I would. How I would do it is, I'd probably go into like Marvelous Designer and grab like a material property, maybe like a nylon, a lightweight nylon, and then just grab it and crinkle it and then stamp that as an alpha so that you could go in here and then it's like a memory wrinkle. If you didn't want to do that or you wanted to try it in here, how I would go about that would be like, okay, here's my plane and I want to put in some wrinkles, like some memory wrinkles on this bag or whatever, or you can just crinkle it up and then like BT brush transpose cloth, and then we'll just kind of go through here. Let's do this. Let's hit Control D a couple times. So we've got wrinkles, right? But they're not like, actually, I also do this. We can hold down Alt and just kind of scale along that axis. Control D. But they're not sharp, right? When you crinkle like that waxy paper, it's sharp. So one thing you can try and do is go in here to get that sharpness. Go in here to clay polish and just run that. And you can also go through here and do like undo and then like do a resharp and sharp and resharp. And that'll go through and like really kind of do some sharpy stuff. So you can also like go in here and be like, hey, let me get some more, or brush cloth. Let's do like a brush cloth twist. No. Brush cloth nudge. No, I want pull hook. There we go. So now we can go through here, and again, it's still gonna be like blobby, like really soft. Boy, this thing is. Here's another thing you can do. We're gonna go down here, and we're going to do. Where is our thick skin? So we turn on thick skin, we can add a thickness to it, and now when we go through and kind of do a cloth nudge, it'll kind of keep it a little more controlled because it's only allowing us to go through and, you know, move the stuff around. So here we are adding more wrinkles. And then again, let's hit Control D and let's go back in here to cloth, clay polish, and just sharpen the hell out of it. And that'll give us more of that waxy paper kind of look. I mean, it's not great. Let me see edge here. There we go. Okay, so play around with like sharp, resharp, and edge, and it'll start getting you something. And then maybe we want to go in here and do like a polish by feature, closed circle, and just knock that back a little bit. At the end of the day, though, I would probably just grab an alpha. Like do your magnum opus of wrinkled wax paper, and then instead of like doing that for every surface, go in here and do like an alpha from mesh or something. And then when you want to apply it to anything else, like, okay, I'm starting a new Taco Bell scene, make polymesh 3D, subdivide it up a little bit, and then now you have a brush that you can go through here and use this for your memory wrinkles. Like, see intensity, let's turn off light Boolean. So now, or you can just buy these too. You can get like memory wrinkle. Boy, it's doing some crazy stuff. Oh, you know what? Because we grabbed it from our mesh. Okay, here's another thing. So this is like a vector displacement. I wouldn't necessarily, if you're doing vector displacement and it's like, I don't know, I wouldn't take this geometry as is because it's crinkled and bad and apply it to your mesh because it's going to make your geometry really bad. So instead of doing mesh, grabbing an alpha, and making a vector displacement, which is, I forgot, this is built from a plane, so technically it would work as a vector displacement. I would, if you really wanted to do that, I would project this geometry through another plane and use that as vector displacement, so it doesn't make your, like, use history project or ZBrush brush to grab this detail. In this case, let's do, we don't want to do from brush, we just want to like grab, create, make 3D transfer. It's been a while since I've done this, geez. Map size, okay. Okay, I guess this is our alpha. So instead of using this, that is 3D. Okay, let's do this. Let's say font. No, I don't want to make it a texture. Why is this hard for me? I mean, one way you could do it, like say how we have these nasty edges. Let's do it. Let's do it old school. Document, turn off proportion. We'll do a 1024 by 1024 resize. And then you can kind of see the corners of the screen if you want to make sure. We're just going to zoom out so we can see the whole thing. I'm going to drag this out, go into edit mode. I'm going to scale this up so we kind of get rid of the edges here. And this is what we want to capture. Oh gosh, is it in our document? Boy, it's been a while since I've done this. Grab, export screen grab, no. Grab resize. Grab doc, is it not a document? Alpha grab doc is probably what it is. Create, transfer, there it is. So we can grab doc, and that will grab, this is just a plain old 2D alpha. You can also go in here and you can say go out of edit mode, and grab your MRGB Z grabber and just kind of drag from the middle, and bloop, that'll grab your texture and your alpha if you want. And then we'll say Control N. I'm going to say document, W size new, and then now if we have a plane, edit, make polymesh 3D. Control D, Control D, Control D. Brush, drag rect, depth grab. So this one doesn't have the 3D, so now when we drag this through, it's not going to screw with my geometry. It's just going to be nicer. So now we can go through here and be like, okay, let me... And in fact, if you want it to, like your overlaps to be, I don't know, maybe play a little nicer, go in here to morph target, store morph target, and then as you drag this out, sometimes those overlaps, that's more for like a reptile thing, but that's just, and also, while I'm doing this, it's like, oh, those are too heavy. Well, of course, you can always go through here and like drop your Z intensity down, or go in here with your alpha and play with your mid value, or turn on surface, you know, so if you had like a sphere and you wanted to apply it to it, you could, if you turn surface off, it might deform your surface a bunch, but if you turn surface on, it'll throw in a mid value for you. I don't know, play around with these if you want, but another thing to consider is you can go through here and be like, okay, I'm going to control tap this point in history, and then I'm just going to add a bunch of wrinkles, and then you can go in here to adjust last, and it will, since your history stored point, you can go through here and adjust how much this is coming in. Or you could make a layer and apply all your sculpts to a layer and do it in there. So, a couple different ways. A quad fill. There might be an option for that. Like if you wanted to just do Shift D. I feel like there is. So in here, I mean, a ZBrush is kind of a quad fill, but if you wanted to say delete hidden, Shift D, Shift D. Oh, did I accidentally? Yeah, Shift D. There we go. Here, delete hidden, fill. So if you, oh. Yeah, I don't know if it'll do a quad fill though. We could do a hover over an edge. There we go. Open edge. And then we want to say close. It really does not want to grab that. Close concave hole. It's not really quads, is it? I wonder if you could do, here's another thing you could do. So if you have, say, delete hidden, we can try this. Let's say we have a closed convex hole here. We have its own polygroup. Yes. And like I want this to be quad mesh. You can isolate it and then say like ZBrush same, and it'll rebuild that geometry, but it looks like it also does some weird stuff. I mean, it kind of worked. It'll ZBrush whatever geometry you have, and then you can just isolate these. It kind of worked. Yeah, I have to play with some of those settings. Let's see. Is it possible for self-taught 3D character artists find a job in 2025 or degree needed? That's a good question. I haven't been on the job market for character art in a while. I'm not really a character artist anymore, but I've heard it's tough. But yeah, I don't have my finger on that pulse anymore if I ever really did, so I don't know. I've heard it's hard. I don't know what's going on with the industry, but it doesn't sound great. Unfortunately. Yeah, like Arson says, lead with your portfolio. Opportunity meets luck and all that. Wish I had a better answer. Cylinders do come out better with ZBrush, but still not perfect yet. Yeah, that's... I mean, you could also... here's another thing, too, is if you do get a cylinder that's pretty good but not perfect, you can say, like, isolate this, Control-Shift. We'll go in here to, like, clip, circle, center, or let's do this. Let's do clip, circle, and you could go through here, and you could say, is it Alt? Yeah, you can hold down Alt, and it will clip to a circle. However, that wasn't a perfect circle, because you saw me, like, trying to guess what a perfect circle is. So you can go in here, and you can say square, and then you can even turn on center, so you can like drag from the middle and then use your space bar, and you can go through here and be like, let me, boop, oops, wait, hold down Alt. So go through here and then hold down Alt, and that will push those out. Now you don't have to keep that. You could also go through here and you could do like a, would that be like a scale edge loop complete, and you could scale this back in if you wanted to, but that's how you could go through and re-circle all of these. In fact, I think there even might be like a circle. Is it a face operation? Something is reminding me there is a spherize, polygroup all. Yeah, that might be. Let's do a test. Subtool, duplicate. I'm going to isolate just this little red panel here, and then I'm going to do like a close convex hole on this one here, and then if I do a spherize, yeah, that makes it a circle, but it also shrinks it. That's another thing too. Let's delete this. Let's duplicate this out. Alternatively, now that you have your Booleans kind of worked in and you're like, I want this to be pushed straight back and not have like, you could go through here manually and say, okay, let's do insert single edge loop, hold down Alt and get rid of those, but like, it's not great. You could go through here and say, okay, let's do this. Control Shift. I'm going to grab all of my major facing polygroups here. Like so. Oh, there we go. We can say delete hidden, and then we can go through here and we can say, okay, let's go through and do a quick close convex hole for these, and then maybe do like a bridge operation for these ones. Oh boy, this gets tricky, but like something like this where it's like, okay, let me bridge this here. And actually, we probably want to re-polygroup these. And in order to get these to work, I'm going to bridge most of it, and then I'm going to say insert single edge loop or insert multiple edge loops, and we'll just like put in a little thing here, and then I can now bridge. So you can go through here and kind of rebuild the facing geometry, and then simply just extrude it back. So for this instance, and then shift. Oops. Oh, what's going on here? Shift. No. Fine. Won't fight you. So now we have this type of thing. So we could go through, once we have all this done, then we could, it's a simple matter of just going through here and extruding polygroup all, or extruding polygroup whatever, and just extruding these back, and then you'll have, you know, something a little more uniform and perfect. Cool. Maybe, maybe not. Depends on how much work you want to put in and how closely you're going to be looking at this stuff. Yeah, so just real quick while I'm thinking about it. Let's, oops, looks like our thing got knocked off axis a little bit when I redid my document. So we're going to go through here and we'll just recreate this real quick. So we're just going to drag, drag, drag these off, dot, put a little dot. And that looks like it, yeah, put a little dot. So now I do know, like, okay, I don't need that whole width in here, so I can hold down Alt and then tap Shift and just like paint in, you know, 4 from the side here, like so. And then again, uncrease all, crease PG. And then for the monitor here, let's go boop, boop. Oh, I should have cut in. I mean, that's fine, but the back here has these things cut in. Luckily, I've got plenty, I've got plenty of geometry here to go through and be like, okay, let me just hold down Alt and just hover over a face if I can. There we go. Boom. And I can, that gives me an idea. And I can say, okay, let me grab 2 of these. And in fact, this isn't symmetrical across the x-axis, but I could probably fudge that. I mean, heck, while we're thinking about it, let's just do it. So here is the actual middle of my model. I guess we have to turn off X symmetry, sorry. Okay, here's another thing we can do. I can hover over and point and say, do nothing. I can hover over an edge and I can say, do nothing. So now when I'm painting from a distance, I can go through here and say, it'll just pick up faces. So I'm going to kind of guess where these things need to go a little bit, just to kind of put those in. There we go. And then I'll say, okay, this is about spaced enough apart. Now you could also Boolean these in, or oh, also when you're painting with white, when you're just painting polygroups, you can just hold down Alt and just paint over it again, and that'll get rid of them. So you're not actually, you don't have to go through and do like the Shift button or anything like that. So now we can say Control W, and now we've got those ready to push in. We got that ready to push in, and then one last thing that we're going to manually push in is, I'm just going to say mark this here. You know, we can just mark the corners. So somewhere in here, somewhere in here, somewhere in here, somewhere in here. There we go. U to U. And this way we'll have like a little thing we can punch in. Let's try to make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, something like this. So we kept these edges straight for us. And again, so one thing too, we say Control W, make that a polygroup. These aren't contiguous anymore, so we can say auto groups, and now we can be a little faster and just say Control W. So now we could inset this, or we could, whatever, extrude. So there's our little, where our little monitor will end up going, and then our little back areas here, we could just say boom, extrude those in, and then boom, extrude that in. Okay, crease PG, crease level 1, smooth slido of 2, and now we've got our little BMO inset body going. Oh, hold on. I didn't realize this was nasty. Let's fix this nastiness. So I'm going to slide this point actions here. There is probably an align here or a flatten that I could do. One thing, you can just hold down Control and tap, and then again just kind of, oh, I have cloth, so I'm moving and it's like doing like a cloth thing where it's like wanting to maintain those relationships. BTC isn't transpose cloth, it's transpose classic. So we'll use that. So W again, control tap this one. Is it not just, it's like doing a soft. Let's do this. Unmask, isolate, W, alt tap, scale. There we go. So that'll just flatten that out basically. Also, you could go through and redraw these. So if this is bugging you and you're like, I wish this was better, it should be fairly simple. There is a, if you hit the comma key, go into your brushes, and there is a, if you really want to get box model-y here, in here, there's a Z modeler. This Z modeler is already set up for slice. That way you don't have to go through here and be like, you know, BZM, hover over point, switch this to slice mesh, hover over an edge, switch this to slice mesh. You can have a brush that's already set up to Z modeler slice. You can just select it. Then you can go here to here, and then you can go through here and you can say collapse edge. So just go through here and you can just start reconfiguring this geometry. You can go through here and you can slice and then collapse and then delete. It's not the funnest workflow in the world, but you can go through and kind of re-slice and redraw this geometry and refix this edge flow if you're so inclined. Alrighty, let's go ahead and just grab this one real quick. Delete hidden, close, convex hole. So now that we've got our little inset pieces, we do have our buttons still sitting here, so that we've been working on our U-mesh. So if we go back to our original stack of subtools, we got these buttons just kind of sitting here, and then our box body. You can keep this around if you want to, just kind of hide it. I'm going to insert our U-mesh, so we're just going to replace that, and then all of these we can just use straight up as buttons. So if I just take all these ones, for example, and just push them back, we can have them, you know, in a little bit, or we can have them pushed out a little bit. It looks like they need to be pushed out a little bit. And now we have complete control over how we want these to interact, or how we want these to be modeled. So one way we could do that, easy way, is go through here and just do a bevel. So you can say a bevel is complete, and just run a bevel along here. And if you even want to like make these all the same bevel, just tap, and that will maintain the exact same bevel for all these. You can do another crease PG. I want to put control loops in here. We'll go through and say insert multiple edge loops, keep polygroup. Let's go through here and just kind of put some control loops in there. We'll do an uncrease all crease PG. Now when we do this, it is going to crease that bevel. So what that result is going to be is give us a nice like mitered edge here. And then you could do like, you know, crease level of 1 or crease level of 2, smooth selective of 3, and have a little fall off for that edge if that's the type of button you want. If you don't, an alternative to that could be just Control Shift tap these polygroups here, both of them, Control W, uncrease all, crease PG. So now when you hit D, that'll maintain that sharp edge here, but that'll just kind of soften that. And in fact, we'll do Shift D. Here's another option for you. Grab all of these, delete hidden, go here and say close convex hole, and when you pull this out, you can actually round this off. So you can go through here and just tap, tap, Control W. So now you have a rounded, let's switch this here. Now you have a rounded version of your button. Another thing you can do is, let's go to here where we had the holes. Let's go in here and we'll do another close convex hole. So we'll close these off and then we'll isolate them. And then we'll go through here, put a big old fat bevel on it. So bevel edge loop complete here, and then just tap, tap. Go back in here with like insert multiple edge loops, and then switch this to interactive elevation. So you can actually pull this out and round it off however you'd like. And that way you can have kind of a rounded edge here. And at this point, it's up to you if you want to just hit D for dynamic and uncrease all and just have it be a nice soft fall off, or if you want to say crease PG, you know, and maintain, you know, the front crease here. And you can also go in here and do like a inset. Not that you would do that for this one, but inset polygroup all legacy. You could pull in an inset. You could inset this polygroup. You could Q mesh this back, and you could say crease PG. And now you have a nice, you know, kind of inset holy kind of thing. As far as I can tell, though, as far as options go, they just look like, I don't even know that they have a real bevel on them. So having said all that, let's go back to plain Jane. Yeah, something like this. D for dynamic, call it a day. It's kind of how they look. And now this one too will hit D for dynamic. Now if we want to scale these down a little bit, I would probably I'm going to grab this one here and just say split hidden, and then grab this one here, Control Shift A, split hidden. So now I have complete control. I can just Alt tap them, go to Unmesh Mesh Center, and then hold down Alt and kind of scale along that long axis there, just to kind of make these, you know, kind of fit in there. This one too. This one might be good to go. We can just say crease PG, crease level of 2, smooth so div of 3. Just kind of knock those back a little bit, and you're kind of good to go. Or be as particular with those as you'd like. And then we can go to the side here. We make these all uniform depth. And then this one here. And all of this also you could do manually. You don't have to. Don't feel like you always have to be fancy or anything. Crease PG, dynamic. This one probably needs a little more control loops in here, and you don't have to do multiple. You can just do single. Just go through here, or you can just front load them, put in an actual control loop. Because when I do this, insert multiple edge loops, this isn't really adding control loops, it's just adding geometry. But if you want to put in control loops, you can just do a single one just to hold that edge here, and that'll kind of round it out. But then if you want to maintain this corner, you know what, we can turn on X symmetry, but then put on local symmetry so it goes across the X axis here, so we can kind of hold these corners a little bit. I don't know, fiddle with that as much as you'd like. And then last but not least, so this is where we use these for the Booleans, right? Just to get, oh yeah, this is great. So we use these for Booleans just to make it so it wasn't so complex, but now we have a problem. Now we have square when what we really want is pill shaped, or whatever the shape these are. So I'm gonna go through here, we're gonna put this back. So this is our buttons sticking out. Now these are easy enough, right? All we got to do is insert multiple edge loops, blah, blah, blah. All that good stuff here. You and you. And in fact, you don't even have to, you could, you know, go through here and run a bevel, but you can also say, you know, inset polygroup all. Oops, let's do a group by normals. Inset polygroup all here, and then we could even do like a Q mesh. If we're going to do this though, let's make these both the same. So when I Q mesh this out and hold down Shift, it'll just pull along the surface normal. So that's another way you could do a bevel, and then you could round this out with your insert multiple edge loops, interactive elevation, bing, something like that. However you want to do it. So we'll go ahead and make these all one polygroup here, and then crease, oops, let's do an interactive, boom, there we go. Crease PG, D for dynamic, whatever. So that's easy enough, right? But now this needs to be, needs to fit this. So this is where, God, maybe I should have, but you can hold down Control Alt. Let's grab, what's the best way to do this? It's manually, I'm thinking manually is probably how I'm going to do this. Not the world's greatest, but let's do this. Control Shift drag over these polygons here. And now I'm not going to be in dynamic mode while I have faces hidden, but that shouldn't be too problematic. And then Control Shift Alt. So I just have these polygons here. So if I'm going to move these polygons around, number one, if I'm in BZM, I can slide them if I want to, but I'm snapped to the front. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to go into Move Brush, but I'm going to go over here to my brush options, and we're going to say Depth, and we're going to say Infinite Depth in the, turn my floor, the Z direction, the blue line. So straight back, basically, Infinite Depth in the Z direction. So now when I use my Move Brush, it's going to go all the way back. So now if I go through here and just kind of like move these around here just to get it to fit. It's not really doing a slide. And you know what we could do? Like, I do want to have it smooth previewed. So what we can do is just say hold down Control Alt and just mask. Because I don't, if I'm doing infinite depth, I don't want to move it points back here. But this will just protect those basically. So now I can go through here and I can kind of match our profile geometry. Now I do want to be careful because like I can match it here. And in fact, the creasing might be throwing me off. So let's do Shift D. Let's do Control Shift. I'm going to grab all of these polygroups in here, make them all one polygroup here. Same with this ring. So now I'm going to say uncrease all, crease PG, and now when I hit D for dynamic, it will automatically, it's not going to put these creased corners in here, although it does have this geometry, which I'm not in love with. We could do a bevel along here. We could do an inset around this if we wanted to kill that, or we could literally just go through here and slice and collapse. There's a couple different ways we could alleviate that. But anyway, just giving you some options here. Now, while I'm doing this, and again, it's super manual and super gross, and I apologize for that. But we have infinite depth on. It's getting us something, right? And sometimes something is good enough, especially on something that, or you could just, you know, make this in a CAD program and export it and then ZRemesh that, or rebuild it manually. Rebuilding it manually is probably the nicest way to go. It'll just take you a little bit. But at the end of the day, by the time you're done finagling all of these options, it might have been faster to just go in and manually rebuild it. Something to consider. Now, while I'm doing this, I can say, okay, this basically matches, but just be careful. Hit Shift D and then just take another look and be like, okay, actually these need to be, you know, straightened. You know, so again, this is kind of gross, but you know, sometimes people are gross. I'm no exception. Okay, something like that. Now, we got our buttons here. We got our front face. We got this thing. This thing was just pushed in, right? That's like a little SD slot, so we can probably just delete this. That, and then we got our back panel. Let's hold down Shift, turn off our eyeball, Shift, turn our eyeball back on. I'm going to hold down Shift. You know, we don't hold down Shift, but we'll set all of these. We don't want to do subtractive for these anymore, so we're just going to grab them. There we go, and we'll just turn this off. Okay, so we got our body, and the rest of it's just kind of easy. It's like making arms and legs and stuff like that. Oh, stretch. Okay, back to chat. There's a brush for grabbing alphas. Yes, there is. Back to our talk about this. There is a brush extractor. You can try like the extract drag rect. So hit G on your keyboard and drag this out, and that'll go ahead and grab. And then now if we wanted to apply that to our, do we have a sphere? Here we could just, you know, you kind of make it a custom brush with your extractor brush, or you could do the extract, you know, whenever I say something and you're like, extractor, what are you talking about? There's this channel I got. You can go in here and say extractor, and this will give you all the extractor. And you can even look in here and say ZBrush 2020. What's that all about? You go in here to playlists. You can say ZBrush 2020. What's 2020? What's new? View full playlist. And everything that came out in 2020, you can just go through this whole playlist and make sure you don't miss anything. Like, what's all this extractor stuff? Also, so there's that here. Check it out. Also, ArtStation page. Go here, ZBrush What's New. Here's all the What's New ZBrush stuff. Might be a little easier to find, and also there's more project-based stuff in here, like we were talking about SpongeBob earlier, or, you know, this workshop here. This was all a live stream. This baseball head guy was a live stream. It's right here. You can just click on this. It's got the links to the YouTube channel, little sizzle video, so you can kind of get an overview of how it was made, and you can go make your own baseball head guy. So here is that. Albums, yes. So if you're more project oriented, you can check those out. Good morning. How masterful I am, but we are making BMO. So there's a certain amount of mastery that goes with that, especially the awkward way we tackled it. Oh, one more thing I did want to mention. So when we hit D, Shift D, and then D for dynamic, again, we are not getting those rounded edges, but we can go through here, and like I said earlier, we say insert single edge loop. We can hold down Alt, and we can get rid of some of these edges that'll round this corner off, as well as these don't need to be separate polygroups or have a crease on the corner. So we can just take these two polygroups here and hit Control W. Take these two polygroups here now, Control W. So now when I hit D for dynamic, well, we'll say uncrease all, crease PG, D for dynamic. Now we have a much more rounded corner on here. So again, we can now be careful while I'm deleting these loops, make sure it's not interacting or affecting anything around it, right? So you may need to do a little bit more fancy footwork depending on what's going on. And in fact, even this bottom one here, uncrease all, crease PG. Now you're going to see I like to use polygroups for my creasing. You don't have to. You can manually go through and say like crease edge loop or whatever. It's just a way for me to, again, do it not so manually. Insert edge loops. So I'm going to go through and I'm actually back off a bunch of these edge loops so I have a little more control over how round these corners get. Like so. So we can say D for dynamic. And honestly, I think that's pretty good. But if you wanted to now, you could go through here and now we could do a slide edge loop complete. And then as you slide an edge over, it'll just keep those corners nice and tight, like so. So there's that. Oh yeah, and then this back panel here, we just have this plain old one here. So we're going to go through, again, we want to have rounded corners, right? Yeah, yeah, slightly rounded corners. So now let's go through here. I'm going to make this all one poly group here. So we're going to say hover over an edge with a zoom brush, polygroup, polyloop. Oh, what? Turn off. Turn on LSIM. There we go. So here, Alt Tap, uncrease all, crease PG. And now we have rounded corners, but now we have X symmetry turned on, X and Y symmetry. So now when I do a slide edge loop complete and we want to tighten these corners up, no problem. We can just go through here and just, do what we need to do to make that back panel. Now on that back panel is these little, let's see. And when we're getting to this level of detail, instead of going through here, and I'll go ahead and show you how to do it, but so this geometry matches the front and the back. If it didn't, just grab the front face, delete hidden, and then again, Q mesh polygroup all or extrude polygroup all will pull this through. And if it flips your normals, go in here to display properties, flip. And now, if we wanted to punch a hole in this corner, you could go through here and you could do like a, is it a split? Yeah, you could do like a split, and then again, just tap to match that, and then do a Q mesh polygroup ball, just push this back. Again, crease PG, D for dynamic, and now you've got like a hole punched in. And again, you could go through and bevel this or inset, whatever you want to do. Or, even something as simple as crease level 1, crease level 2, smooth level 3, and that'll punch those in, and then you can put a little thing in there. But if you're also so inclined, you could just go in here and grab like a cylinder 12 or whatever, say split mass points, say just run a crease. You don't have to do crease polygroups. I just like them. And then we can scale this down. And now you have like just a little bolt that you can stick on top of something. But since we already cut that in, might as well keep it, right? So we'll say hold on Alt, yoink. And now, and really what that's getting us is just a relationship between two pieces. Nothing looks more CG than an object and then something crashed into it, because nothing does that in real life mostly. So that just screams CG. But then if you give a relationship between the two objects and there's a fit and there's a fall off and there's an edge highlight that catches, it's better. So we're going to say move multiple, grab this back piece here. Was going to make, now this is, I just said that right, but now this thing's literally crashing on there. And you can tell the difference. Like this one looks like it fits in there nicely, and then this one is like, what's going on there? Now you could back it off a little bit so that it's just sitting on it, so that any of that edge fall off, it'll kind of get that, but it's up to you. Now, speaking of fixing those kind of shading errors, if we do Shift D, I'm going to say we probably need when it goes from this point to this point and then it rounds it out, it's having some problems. So in this instance, maybe going through here and doing like an insert single edge loop, something to kind of hold these edges. You can hold down Shift and it'll kind of do a little bit more of an equidistant. So we'll put in just a little geometry to kind of hold this. You could also go through here and do like inset polygroup island legacy, and you could put in a control loop on that side too. So now when we hit D, that'll shade a little bit nicer. And then also, if you wanted to control that bevel, just go through here and just say bevel edge loop complete. That's also kind of putting in as long as you got a control loop here, that should work. There we go. So that'll shade a little bit nicer. This up here is also not shading great. Same deal. The easier fix, instead of going through here and doing like inset polygroup island legacy, pulling this in and then trying to like go through here and collapse a bunch of edges, is literally just to go through here and do an extrude polygroup all. There's your control loop. Oh, let's do polygroup island. There we go. There's your control loop, and now you can just make these all one polygroup. Let's do. Oh, I hate when it does that, where it like has like a miscellaneous polygroup in there. I guess we can just do this. There we go. So now I can isolate these two polygroups here. Control W, uncrease all, crease PG. Although even these ones here, let's just make these all one. I love me some polygroups. I'll keep that a separate polygroup here. But you just got to be careful. I'm going to say auto groups on this one. Increase all, increase PG. There we go. D for dynamic. So now you can see this one will shade nicer. These ones don't. But we can do this. Well, actually, we had X and Y symmetry on. So we're good to go. How awesome is that? If we didn't, if we just worked on this one and then it's like, oh crap, I should have done it on the other ones. Because the bounding box is the same, you could do a geometry modified topology mirror and weld with LSIM turned on using that bounding box, and you can mirror and weld this change over to that side and then the X direction and then again in the Y direction. But we're good to go. How about that? So D for dynamic. Okay. Oh, stretch. Thank you, Harsh. Okay, cool. Excellent. Yeah, Cinema 4D can do yeah, I would imagine like a modeler mod. There might be a better way or a way to do a quad fill besides like visible geometry Z remesh. I just can't think of it. Clip and purge circle is a way to even out the edges around the cylinder to avoid those nasty kinks on geosmoothing. Spherize might, but then again it shrinks it. So like you might have like spherize first and then clip back. Might be your best. Might be a good 1-2 punch. Excellent. I probably won't be here Thursday, but I do have a new computer. I'm going to try to get settled in at work and then maybe start doing content again. Okay, so now we'll just really quick, we're going to do the rest of BMO. Or delete this out of here, just to kind of wrap up, what we got going on here. We don't need this extra box body anymore, I don't think. If we ever do, you can always just save, and just have a version sitting there, right? So let's go to, I guess we're streaming, and then we'll go in here and we'll say new folder, BMO. Oh, we still got a Pickle Rick in there from a decade ago. BMO 001. And now we've already got all of these pieces, and then I can just, if I ever want them back, I'll have a file that has those in there. So now, let's do like a rounded monitor in here. What we could do, like you could say, hey, I'm just going to start with this geometry. I'm just going to duplicate this off, isolate that monitor geometry in there, and then you could just say, okay, now I have extrude polygroup island or polygroup all. We have an entire piece of geometry in here that's a monitor. And that's probably what this is. I'm gonna do something a little bit different If you wanted to round this out, it wouldn't be too difficult to do, I don't think. Oh, I think we grabbed a little more geometry than we needed. I'm going to grab this piece here, Control-Shift-A, delete hidden, unmesh, mesh center. So now, if we wanted to, this has a bunch of geometry in it, but we could go through here and we could do and you know what we might actually use this. We can do a deformer. You can go through here and you can make different resolutions. It's like a lattice tool in Maya, but then hold down Control-Alt, and we can say, kind of round this out in this direction, and then kind of round it out in that direction. And now you've got that kind of look, kind of like an old CRT monitor. So that's one way we could do that. So we'll go ahead and rename this as face. Another option we could do is, that's fine. You could put a big old sphere in here and slice it and ZBrush it, but I think that actually works. Yeah, let's not overthink it. We got other things to worry about. So now, BMO on the side. Let's go into our, what's the best way to do this? It's bold font. So let's go grab a Polymesh 3D. And while you're working, I'm going to do a quick save. If you hover over that, it's 9. I don't know if you can see that on my screen, but just above Z plugin menu, there's a quick save button, or you hit 9 on your keyboard. So that will save your whole session. Make sure you don't lose anything if we crash. Now, I'm going to, not that I think we will, but just in case. Z plugin. What was I doing? It was a text 3D. We're going to say new text. We're going to say BMO. Enter. There we go. And now let's say this is sans. Regular font is all we got. Is there and we can make it bold by ourselves. I was just hoping that, what's a good, I guess Arial probably has a bunch of options, right? It always does. Okay, so it's got, not only does it have bold, but it has black, which is, I think, even more bold. Yes, so we'll just do black. Yeah, I think that'll work. Now, there are other options in here. One of those things being adaptive on or off. So if you turn adaptive off, that'll give you more geometry, and honestly, that's what I want. You can also do how extruded it is. We can do that manually later as well. Resolution, you can crank that up. I'll give you more edges. 4 seems to be doing it for me. Spacing, bevel, you can add a bevel now or you can add it later. And also the resolution, so you can put a bevel in there and then add more edge loops on that bevel. I'm going to do all that manually. So I think this will work. We're going to go ahead and say nothing. We're not going to say anything because this is fine. So we're going to delete this. We have our text in here. If you were so inclined, you could isolate like these, delete hidden, ZBrush, same, and have size down to 0 and just ZBrush to geometry, or let's try double. You know the drill. Just like we did with the body, you can go in here and ZBrush this geometry and get it to work for you. In fact, for that M, we could also try this. Let's go ahead and split this out, split hidden, and then we'll do an LSIM, ZBrush double, geometry modified topology, mirror and weld across the X, turn on X symmetry, hold down Alt here, and then we could just isolate this and delete it. It looks like down the middle, it's not welded. There's like a little extra. So we'll go in here and we'll do a weld points. Crank up that weld distance, or maybe turn it to close circle. There we go. We can weld those back. So instead of having that weird geometry, you got nice geometry. Although now that I see that, I probably do want to stitch these. So we can say stitch 2 points, U to U, and then go in here through move brush. Good enough. One way to do it. Let's move this up just a little bit. Okay. And then these ones too. Let's just say ZBrush double. Not terrible. So we can merge these back down. And now we have something a little bit nicer than the previous geometry. Now we could also go in here and bevel this, but we could also do that later. So we've got this here. Let's do a quick save. And I do like to do a quick save before I do this next one because sometimes it does get crashy. B, create insert mesh, new. So now we have a BMO stamp, or so we can go back here and we can be like, hey, let's stamp a BMO text on here. Also, you could just go in here and say append and just grab our BMO text here. And then now you gotta go through and say, rotate it 90 degrees. Just holding down shift. It goes down this way. Yes. Yup. BTC, brush transpose classic. Wait, BT, it is classic. Why is it acting like, oh, unmask? What is this? All right, let's go into deformation, unify. Boy, that was weird, huh? What am I missing? Oh, I know what I'm missing. I have transform. No, I mean it is across the x-axis, but I don't know. The other cool thing about having nice uniform geometry is if I'm looking at the font here and I'm like, oh, that B's pushed a little bit far back, we can literally just go in here and say, you know what, let's grab this, delete hidden, done. Or we can mask this here and, you know, kind of do whatever we want to with our font, just to kind of modify it. Okay, so let's go down to mesh center. I'm not sure what's going on there. It's a little bit weird. But we have BMO here. If we go bring our thing back, we can say this is the wrong side. So let's go ahead and say deformation mirror across the x-axis. And then mirror now across the z-axis. There we go. Move. And let's go ahead and we'll set the O here, and then we'll set our pivot, and then we'll actually let's hold down Control Shift A, go to Unmask Mesh Center, and now we can scale. Yoink. Okay, something like that. I'm gonna scale up just a tiny bit. And now we don't have any thickness. Again, if you want to, you can hit D for dynamic, and then turn dynamic off, or turn smooth down to 0 and then add fake thickness. And then if you want it to just come out from the surface, you can say offset of 100, and now you've got fake thickness and you can kind of dial it in without committing. And then, so we've got half of the BMO. Now we want to make an arm. If we're going to rig this, we would probably want the arms, you know, straight out or A pose or whatever. I'm not going to worry too much about that. We'll have a little bit of fun. So, you could do a cylinder. If you are going to do a cylinder, you could pull out and then push back in. That'll kind of give you a little bit of a noodle arm. I'm going to say split mass points. However, if we want to bend this noodle arm, we need more geometry. What is going on? No, I guess that's what I would expect. We can fix that. But we want to do an insert multiple edge loops just to kind of give more geometry in here. And of course, I still have interactive elevation. Let's do specified elevation. Something's going on here. What am I missing? Why is it interactive elevation? I turned it to 0. Oh, I have thickness. Dynamic thickness down to 0. Ugh. Okay, so hit W, hold down Alt, and scale along that axis here. And then we're going to go in here and insert multiple edge loops. So this will give us more geometry. And now we can go in here to my favorite thing in the world, bend curve. So we can add more curve resolution. We'll just add like 3. And now I can literally go in here and be like, wink, wink, like so. Now, he does have little hands. So we'll go ahead and put those in. And I think we got to have thumbs, right? Or maybe not. Yeah, okay. So we got a little thumb and like 3 fingers. Easy enough to add. So before we start going and bending this just yet, or maybe we want to bend it first. Yeah, we'll bend it first. So here's our little arm. Let's go ahead and make sure we're about the right size and shape here. So we've got our little arm sticking down, and then we want to leave some room for some fingers here. If I am going to Z-remesh this, I do want to make sure that I go through here and do a quick group by normals, because I'm going to Z-remesh this, like I said. And we'll go ahead and make this straight. Now on top of this, let's go ahead and add some fingers. So let's go through, and I think, well, let's do cylinders, and then I'll round off the tips. So we're going to do 1 finger like so, and maybe we want to squash the end of this arm here. So let's say split mass points. Let's Alt-tap this. I'm going to say Control-Alt, go to Unmesh Mesh Center, and we're just going to kind of flatten this a bit. Maybe even, yeah, okay. Something like that. So now, here is one finger. So I'm going to go to Unmesh Mesh Center. We're going to hold down Alt to kind of scale it along that axis here. And then to round this cap out, we're going to say Group by Normals, Isolate, Geometry Modify Topology, Delete Hidden, Close, Convex Hole, and we can just round this out. Now, the question is, do I want to do this now or after? I think I want to do this after I Boolean, so I'm going to change my mind. I do want polygroups on all the major sides, and I do want these fingers spaced out, so when I ZBrush this, they're not going to like stick together or anything like Boolean. I'm not going to like stick together. I want these to be nice separate fingers. I actually don't know how this is going to work out, but we'll see. Something like this, and then we want one for the thumb. Now for this one, these can all be a lot shorter, and we could also put some bend in them, but I think we can do that manually later. Boy, this might actually be tougher than I thought. Let's go through here, and let's say move this out. And again, we can massage this later. I'm literally just making sure that, you know, we've got our fingers can all fit inside here. Let's do an auto groups. W, control tap this one here, so I can, because I'm going to smooth this out. I'm going to smooth this out. I'm just trying to make, again, whenever I'm doing a Boolean operation, I want to make it as simple as possible first and then go in and massage it. So we'll say this is our thumb here, and then we'll go through and we'll say group by normals. So we got polygroups on all major sides. I don't want this to overlap necessarily. So we'll scoot this over, and then I'll give this a little room to breathe. Okay, so there's that. And now let's make these fingers the appropriate length. And like I said, we're going to let ZBrush do the heavy lifting if we can. And then this thumb needs to be, yeah, something like that. So polygroups on all major sides, crease PG, D for dynamic, same thing for these, crease PG, dynamic on, D for dynamic, and oh, smooth subdiv up to 2 because we turned that off. So now you got nice smooth. We can do a Boolean on this, so I just want to show just the arm and the hand. Polygroups on all sides, yes. So now we'll do but just these two showing, live Boolean on, we'll say make a Boolean mesh with dynamic subdivision here. Now we have our UMesh results. And actually, before I did that, I probably should have gone through here and added some spans, but I think this might work okay. I'm going to say ZBrush half, depth size down quite a bit, keep smooth groups down to 0, and just let this resolve. And then if I want to recap these so that they're rounded, that's when I can just go in here and say delete hidden, close, convex hole, just pull out. Like, ooh. You, and then these here, I think I can just make these all one polygroup now. And then we just manually and then if we wanted to bend these, W, control drag down the object here. And then we just go through here and, like, you know, put a little bend. And let's go back here to like mask lasso. Reset our pivot here. You know, however you want to relax those fingers. I guess this is fine. And then again, I'm just holding down control while I'm dragging down the mesh, and then I'm using mask lasso, just holding down control and mask lasso. and we'll do one more little pinky. Oops. And we can scoot these apart. There we go. And then for the thumb, if this thumb is too long, remember, because we Booleaned it with our polygroups, we can go in here and say insert, and it should give us, you know, some decent non-spiraling edge loops. So now we can go through here and be like, let's make this a little shorter. And then just a little bend for a little thumb here. Now, if I want this to be the same on both sides, let's go back to our stack here. We don't need our hand anymore or our arm. Append our U-mesh, geometry modified topology, mirror and weld with LSIM turned off, so it does it across the world axis. I guess not that, this. However, we do need, let's turn everything else back on. We do need our beam on the other side. So we're going to say, I'm going to duplicate this first and then deformation mirror it across the world x-axis. And now it's backwards, so now I'm going to mirror it across the z-axis here. Now I'm going to scoot this back so that it matches where the armhole is. Okay, now, I mean, gosh, the leg's going to be super easy, but same deal, just really quickly. You can also just have, like, I have a bend curve here you can use for an arm, but we'll keep it simple. We'll do a cylinder 12, X symmetry turned on, pull out, push back in, say split mass points, Shift D, Shift Z, make sure they're the right length, and I'm going to keep these actually straight. I'm not going to bend them out. Something like this, and then let's not overthink this. Let's go through here. Let's do insert multiple edge loops. Like so we give this something we can bend later if we want to, put a little knee in there. And then I'm going to hold down Control Alt W, and we're just going to hold down Control and drag out an edge ring, and then Control drag out an edge ring, and then Control drag out an edge ring. Again, trying not to overthink it. And then if we want to, let's do a quick group by normals. Oh, we still have infinite depth on. Maybe that's why things were acting weird. When you're doing that, just keep in mind, you might have put on a weird option that's doing something weird. It's doing what you told it to do, but, you know, sometimes you forget. Need a little indicator that I have infinite depth on. And then, of course, if you wanted to round out this foot, same deal. Let's do a quick mirror and weld across the x-axis, grab this, delete hidden, and then close. Just do our little rounded trick here. Control W. Now some big old honker feet here, so let's do this. Insert single edge loop, Alt, Control, Alt, drag. There we go. Now, if these are too thick as far as legs go, you can go through here and you say do a deformation inflate, and just do a little bit of a deflate, and then since we put those feet in there, something like this. And now when it comes to texturing, I'm not missing anything major on here, but when it comes to like texturing the face, we don't have UVs on this. It's just arbitrary geometry, but we can make UVs real quick. So we can go through here and we can say Z plugin UV master, and we can say is it symmetrical? Let's see, geometry modified topology mirror and weld across the X. Close enough. I think we can make it symmetrical. So let's do our weld points here. Just weld those points together. And in fact, if you wanted to, it's like I like the shape. Deformate, geometry modified topology, delete hidden, zero mesh, let's say half. We don't need to keep groups. And then, so now it's just kind of redid that geometry, and then we can say extrude back, and then like we did before, flip, crease PG, dynamic. I guess we can say crease level 15 since we're not going to see the edges of it. And you know, let's scale it out just a tiny bit, just in case. Okay, so now we have an object, but it doesn't have UVs. And in fact, we don't even need thickness on this if we didn't want, because again, we're not going to see it. So I guess we can delete hidden. If we want UVs on here, we're going to say Z plugin UV master, symmetry and polygroups if you have that. And then we can just say unwrap. And then we can say flatten. There's our UVs, so unflatten. Not that you necessarily need UVs, because in ZBrush you can just subdivide, right? Just subdivide up to 800,000 if you want. Let's do, if we want to transfer, we don't need to. So I want something to sample from. So let's do this. We don't need this anymore. I think we've got our guy pretty well dialed in. So let's go back in here to our texture. Again, if I have something selected and I add it to our spotlight, it's in here. So if I hit Z, here's our widget. We can kill that. Let's go back and grab, we can paint through our object if we wanted to like paint this face. So we can select this, add it to our spotlight, Shift Z. We can move this into place. And now I can literally say, hey, I want to paint this face on my objects. I'm going to go into standard brush, or let's turn off live Boolean. BPA is your paintbrush. That's just standard brush RGB turned on. Make sure underneath your brush settings here, we have samples set to spotlight projection. So when we turn off lazy mouse, we can go through here. What's going on here? Dynamic off. If you're ever sculpting or painting on something and it's super laggy, it probably means you subdivided something and left dynamic on, and it's doing a lot of work under the scenes, behind the scenes. So we can go through here and you can paint the face on there, and then we can say, you know what, I'm going to tap C to sample that color underneath, RGB intensity at 100, and we can get rid of that frame here. So that's a really easy way to just transfer information. And because this thing has UVs now, this is a poly paint, but you can go down here to texture map, create new from poly paint, and that will throw that poly paint onto your texture map. And you can say like clone texture, select it, export, and you can export that as a PNG to go onto your low res geometry if you wanted to. So now with that texture, I can drop the subdivision level 1, and because it's not a poly paint anymore, it's a texture, it'll look nice and sharp, or at least as sharp as we made it when we painted it. Or you could just do it manually. How I would go about that is, let's go out of edit mode, Control N, clear our canvas. We have a texture sitting in here, and it's square. Yeah, it's square. So this is actually going to be easy, but if it wasn't square, I'll show you a trick. Polymesh 3D plane selected, drag it down our canvas, go into edit mode, the white color. We're going to go in here to our texture map, and we're going to load up that texture here. So here's just something we can sample from for colors. And then if we wanted to, we can hold down poly paint from texture, hold down shift and tap, and that will make your poly plane the exact ratio of your image. So it will get rid of any stretching you have. This is square, so we're good to go. Oh, this is an old plane. I just wanted a regular old plane. Plane 3D, I guess. That's fine. Anyway, what I'm actually going to use this for is I'm going to throw this on here. I can go to a flat color. So this is just color information. I'm going to go up here to the corner. I'm just going to have him sit in here. So I'm going to say go out of edit mode to drop it. And then I'm going to go back to my stack here, drag this out, go into edit mode. We'll switch to a skin shader 4, let's say. And now I can literally go C to sample, and I can go through here and I can like fill color, fill object, Control Alt Shift F. Oh, and I could fill the object with that. However, I have a texture turned on for that. So now I just filled this, and then I can just manually go through here. I can like sample and paint, but the texture's fine. But I'm also going to use this. So if I want to grab like, if this is the color I want, just C to sample, or C, that looks maybe a little better. Alt tap here, and then we'll just say Control Alt F to fill, or color fill object. Same thing for the arms and the legs. Let's go ahead and hit D for dynamic for those legs here. Yes. What else we got? We got yellow. And some of these I might have to go in and configure those look a little bit, I mean, it kind of depends on the reference you're looking at. And if some of these look a little dark, we can just go in here and just lighten it up, and then Alt tap and frame, and then red, and then green, and then blue. I'm just tapping C on my keyboard to sample the color, and then another dark blue. We'll steal this one. And then like a darkish gray. Maybe not that dark. And then on the back, that looks like it's same color as this. So we'll just steal this. And then this. Now, those letters don't have a whole lot. Let's do this. Let's say group by normals. That's not, oh, it's like, why didn't it do it? We have dynamic turned on with thickness. If we like that thickness, just hit apply. I like to turn dynamic on again, turn thickness down to 0, and then turn smooth back up. So now we can do a group by normals, crease PG, crease level of like say 1, smooth div of 2, and that'll kind of maintain my border edges and kind of give me a nicer, smoother look. Same thing for this one. So again, dynamic apply, thickness down to 0, smooth div up to 2, group by normals, crease PG, crease level of 1, smooth div of 2. And now we've got a little bit of a nicer look. And on this one here, see how he's very square? And depending on the style you're going for, that could be fine. I see some objects, some versions of him that's square and some that aren't. But anything you want to change, it should be fairly easy for you to go through here, just the way it's set up now. We can go through here, let's turn off X symmetry. Be like, hey, you know what, I want to shrink this down. So first we're going to unmask this, and then we're going to go to the back and just make sure that it's masked on the back here. Hit W, go to unmask mesh center, and then we can just say hold down Alt, and we can kind of scale along this axis, or we can go through here and say, I want to shrink this down, you know, thin that out a little bit. As far as bubbling it out, this is going to be a little trickier, but one thing you can do is I'm going to take the body and then all of the buttons here, because they're all just dynamic subdivision, right? So you could go in here and say, you could merge them all down and then split them back up, or I can just do a merge visible. That'll put a merged version out here, and you can literally go in here and just do a deformer, and then we can say, you know, let's round that out a little bit, maybe take this one here and round this out a little bit, and then we can say, okay, hit D for dynamic again, crease level of 1 or 2, smooth div of 2, and now we've got like a little bit more of a friendlier, rotund version of the body. It does skew the objects a little bit, but because they're all together, you could go in here with your move brush and just be like, let me nudge, let me massage these things. And again, if you want to, you can like mask some areas so you don't mess with them too much, you know, and kind of play around with that. But yeah, that's BMO, give or take. We'll do control, and this could also just be painted on if you wanted to, if you're not going to get super close to it. Or, like we did earlier, we got plenty of resolution over here. So if we do, I'm just going to kind of eyeball this, but if we just go through here and paint like U, it's kind of vaguely in a circle above B. So we're going to say U, U, oh boy. Here, 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 something like that. You know, you could just go through here and say, okay, let's extrude this. There we go. Good enough, maybe. Or you can, you know, widen them out or whatever, but it's fine. Something like that. And then polypaint it, do occlusion, make things set a little nicer, go through and do a nice render or whatever. But anyway, boy, that BMO took the whole time, didn't it? Up to the last 2 minutes. Working on heels, notice the way you do the sources and make the holes. Do I make on heels? Do I make the holes for the heel bottom? I have to see a picture of that one. Working on heels, like a high heel, or just like a boot heel. Make holes. Do I make? Oh, I mean, if we're talking about just like boots, I do have a. I don't know if this is exactly what you're asking, but all. If it's like a boot tread, I would probably Boolean and ZBrush that, like this. So here's a boot tutorial. So here's like 18 videos. This is an older one, but 18 videos, or this right here. You can go through and click on it. There we go. This will walk you through and basically going through here and making this, and then Booleaning and ZBrushing, kind of like what we did today, but you can get as fancy as you want. That's how I'd go about making a heel. Oh, perfect. Excellent. Yeah. So when you're exporting, so like Damien's saying, if you export a texture and it does something weird out of ZBrush, a lot of times that is just like if I wanted to export this face and it turns up upside down in my other, anything else I'm working on, go in here before you export. Let's go back down. Wait. Something weird going on. Texture. There it is. Grab this and then do a flip V, and that'll flip it vertically and then export it. Good. Excellent. What is your favorite, or what is your best way to combine things and don't overlap them? For example, do you use Booleans or try to model them with ZModeler? Oh, okay. Perfect. So basically this entire, I go through both, but basically usually Booleans and ZBrush if I can. If I can't, ZModeler or a combination, kind of like what we did with this one. Threadripper's high count cores, like 64 cores, still actual in CG, or everything moving towards GPU. GPUs are like, CPUs are a little more multi-purpose or smarter. So GPUs have, if you want to hammer a nail 1,000 times, then you would use a GPU for that task. If you want to like have somebody fold your lawn, like you can have 1,000 monkeys with hammers hammering nails, and the GPU could do that and it'd be fine. But if you wanted like someone to make your dinner or fold your clothes, you wouldn't want 1,000 monkeys on that task, because God knows what they're going to serve you, right? So that's kind of the difference. You need both depending on what you're working on, and then you want big fat pipes between them. So you kind of, I mean, it depends on what you're working on. If you are doing very GPU intensive only tasks, then yeah, just load out your or just maximize your GPUs. But generally speaking, if you've got a DCC app and RAM and a CPU is going to be performing some tasks, there's some throughput through there, and also a GPU, you need nice everything, generally speaking. So in that case, in my case, that would be, what is this? Yeah, so Ryzen Threadripper, we got 24 cores on this thing, 5 gigahertz, and then 128 gig of memory, and then our 5090. We got CUDA cores in here. Yeah, so all three, ideally, if you can, but cool. Thanks, everybody. We made a BMO. How fun is that? And I'll catch you